Baba ki, Bonita ki, Krishna Balaram Giraj Maharaj ki, Shri Prabhupada ki. Oh.
Self-service.
Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Continue our reading from Srila Prabhupada, Lilamrita. Stay high forever. Then we go back. I don't know, someone changed the... We were in somewhere in India, revisited, or unlimited opportunity, limited time. Someone changed
Which place? In India?
We were somewhere in India.
Somewhere, okay.
So, not important. Let's say, vous parlez l'anglais, le français? Ça va l'anglais?
Until. But it's okay.
English, it's okay for you?
Yeah.
Moi, je comprends pas bien.
So we start. Stay high forever means we are at the very beginning of the development of Krishna consciousness in New York. So we are with Bob, not yet initiated. Bob became the treasurer of us. So it was Monday evening after the Sunday Kirtan in the park. So that was the very beginning of the Sankirtan movement when Srila Prabhupada went with some friend of Krishna, not yet his disciple, but becoming his disciple, to chant Hare Krishna, Hare Ram in the park, where there is this big tree that is still honored today with a tile where it's written that Srila Prabhupada started his Sankirtan movement here. So it was in the fall of the year 1970.
66.
66 or 67. We arrived in spring. So 66, in October 66. Donc on est au début du divertissement de Srila Prabhupada, où Srila Prabhupada commence à construire le mouvement de Sankirtan. Au début, en allant chanter le mantra dans les Sunday Kirtan au parc, je ne sais pas comment il s'appelle.
Tompkinson Square.
Hein?
Tompkinson Square.
Tompkinson Square. où il y a un grand arbre avec une plaque commémorative qui explique que Srila Prabhupada a fait ses premiers kirtans en automne, en 66, vraiment au tout début. Donc il n'avait pas encore de disciples initiés, juste des amis de Krishna, pourrait-on dire. Dan arrived at the storefront for kirtan in one day evening. The kirtan was in full swing, and when he entered, the first thing he noticed was some people playing on the innards of an upright piano, leaning against the wall near the door. A boy handed him some wooden sticks, and he sat down and joined in the kirtan. Then came the Swami's lecture, which Dan thought was long and serious, about how sexual desires cause bondage and suffering. The temple was crowded and stuffy, and Dan was shocked by the lecture, but he stayed on because he knew there would be another kirtan. He felt uneasy that Swami's followers were all celibate, and because he liked the kirtans, he resolved to keep coming. Donc, disons en résumé, donc dans le magasin transformé en temple, le kirtan était allé bon train et Srila Prabhupada a donné une classe qui était sérieuse et longue et qui expliquait comment le désir sexuel était à l'origine de l'incarcération de l'âme dans le corps et source de souffrance. Le temple était bourré et Dan se rappelait avoir été choqué par le sujet de la lecture. Mais finalement, il a fini par rester parce qu'il était dans l'expectative d'un autre kirtan et il aimait bien les kirtans. The Swami wasn't quite what Dan had expected. He had imagined something of light-hearted Saint Roshi, laughing and joking with sparkling lies and words filled with paradoxes. But he found the Swami just very straightforward, and even cutting in his speech and his mouth turned down at the corner, making him look mournful. Dan appealed to the kirtans, thinking they would aid his impersonal meditation. But the lecturers kept stressing that God was a person. Dan resisted. He mentally debated with Prabhupada. He was partial to Dr. Radhakrishna's interpretation of the Gita, and yet the Swami often launches ruthless attacks against such impersonal ideas. Gradually, Dan saw his impersonal barrier crumble, and he came to admit that on every count the Swami was right. Donc Dan était en fait influencé par l'impersonnalisme des interprétations de la Bhagavad Gita de Dr. Radhakrishna. Et donc, il résistait à la philosophie que présentait Srila Prabhupada. Mais avec les kirtans, petit à petit, tout ça, cette résistance s'est amenuisée. Et finalement, il a admis que tout ce que disait le Swami, c'était vrai. Judy began attending both the morning and evening classes. She had to rise by 5 o'clock to get to the storefront on time, and her mother and father protested. But Judy didn't care. She would ride an hour and a half on the subway before dawn, downtown to the Swami's meeting, where she would be the only girl present. When the Swami heard that Judy was an art student, he asked her to paint for Krishna. She set up a canvas in the front room of the apartment, and under his guidance she began painting. For her first assignment, she asked her he asked her to paint a portrait of his Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He gave her a photo and instructed her. There should be a flower garland around Guru Maharaj's neck, the tilak around be yellowish, not white, and there should be no effulgence or halo around his head. Donc Judy était elle est devenue Jadurani plus tard, donc une fille. Elle venait le matin et le soir aux classes. Il fallait qu'elle se lève à 5 heures du matin pour être allée au Matchless Gift, au magasin Temple, à temps. Et ses parents protestaient. Mais Judy ne s'inquiétait pas, elle continuait. C'était la seule fille qui était présente. Elle était étudiante dans les arts plastiques et dans les arts décoratifs. Et quand le Swami a appris cela, il lui a demandé de faire une peinture. Donc il lui a demandé de peindre en premier une peinture de Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Et il lui a donné quelques instructions, qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire, pas peindre, telle couleur, etc. Bon. I began chanting and studying the Srimad Bhagavatam at home and attending the Kirtan and classes at the storefront. After the last Kirtan in the evening, the Swami will take a bowl made of simulated wood and a little paring knife and a couple of apples that had been sitting on the edge of his lectern, and he would cut the apples up in the little bowl and hand the bowl to the disciple. The disciple would then offer him the first piece and he would pop it into his mouth. The rest of the pieces of apple would be distributed to the crowd. I remember one time when he was chewing on his piece of apple and he spit the seed out on the floor, up against the wall. The bones of the wall onto the floor next to the days. And I was thinking, oh, wonderful. No one else can do that. No one else would have the nerve to do such a thing. Donc là, les classes étaient introduites par un petit kirtan. Et donc le Swami prenait une pomme et la coupait en morceaux dans un petit bol et prenait un morceau et distribuait le reste à ceux qui étaient là, qui écoutaient la classe, qui avaient écouté la classe. Done. There was a sink right next to the day where he sat. It was so close that he could have leaned over and touched it. After cutting up an apple, he would take the scraps and just fling them into the sink. It was very casual. I was very impressed by that. And one time, Ramananda came up and wanted 50 cents for something. And the Swami reached down and picked up his little black purse, the kind that closes by a metal clasp at the top. He snapped it open, looked inside very perspicaciously, and then his hand came up like a bird, like an eagle hovering in flight above its prey. But the hand didn't bounce. It just delicately drifted down, took out of a 50-cent piece, and rose up again as if it were being lifted on a balloon. It was graceful. It was a dance, a ballet. It just picked up this 50-cent piece and lifted it into Brahmananda's hand. I couldn't believe it. Someone asks you for a 50-cent piece. You just dig in your pockets and throw it at them. But the Swami seemed to treat everything as Krishna's property, and this 50-cent piece was treated with such care. Donc là, Dan raconte une histoire Ou quand Srila Prabhupada a coupé la pomme, il a jeté d'un geste droit les restes de la queue et du centre de la pomme dans un évier qui était juste à côté du dé, l'arche. Et Dan était impressionné par l'expertise. Une autre fois, Brahmananda est venu et a réclamé 50 centimes, la moitié d'un dollar, un demi-dollar à Srila Prabhupada, qui a pris sa boîte et a pris la pièce d'une manière très mystique, en planant dessus comme si c'était quelque chose qu'il allait prendre. Et il a donné la pièce à Brahmananda. Dan était impressionné par la manière dont il faisait ça, parce que il voyait que Krishna, Swamiji, traitait cette pièce comme la propriété de Krishna. Tellement de soin il prenait à prendre cette pièce. Actually, the devotee, the pure devotee, sees everything related to Krishna. The persons, the ladies as gopis, the boys as servants of Krishna who are uneasy and immature, who make mistakes. But they are part of the Krishna's family, and he is very concerned for that. So many examples where Srila Prabhupada showed his utmost concern for his disciples, the health, and also what happened to them. Now we speak about Brahmananda. Brahmananda was one time sent to Pakistan for preaching. Later on. Pakistan was at war with India. They were committing crimes, sending trains full of bodies, corpses, Hindu corpses, to the border in Varka. I heard that. A lot of people, Indian, Hindus people, men, wife, it goes in one. Blood everywhere, ransacking everywhere. So that's what happened, that's what's happening in Pakistan later on. And Bob was starting a temple over there with a few disciples also. And Pakistan started to, like a volcano, become very hot. And one time, Srila Prabhupada received some news from the newspaper that some foreigners, 3 foreigners, have been killed over there. So he was suspecting it was Bob and his 2 friends, his 3 disciples. So he was very alarmed, concerned by that, and anxiety for that. But what happened is that it was not the case. Of course, Ramananda and his 2 fellows escaped, and they came in India. They crossed the border, they came in India, and when Srila Prabhupada saw them coming in his office in Bombay, he was in tears. His anxiety was so much relief to see them alive. Donc, le Srila Prabhupada voit toujours les choses reliées à Krishna et les serviteurs de Krishna, même si ce sont des disciples, filles ou garçons qui sont néophytes, qui font beaucoup de bêtises, Srila Prabhupada les voit comme des déesses de la fortune, les filles, et les garçons les voient comme des serviteurs de Krishna, envoyés par son maître spirituel tous. Mais il est très concerné par la santé spirituelle et la santé matérielle aussi de ses disciples. Et un exemple que je donnais, c'est celui de Brahmananda qui a été envoyé prêcher, ouvrir un temple au Pakistan avec deux disciples. Et à cette époque-là, peu de temps après, c'était vraiment la guerre très cruelle entre l'Inde et le Pakistan. Beaucoup de gens ont été massacrés pour choses horribles. Et juste avant, Srila Prabhupada a reçu la nouvelle sur des journaux indiens que trois étrangers avaient été massacrés au Pakistan. Et Srila Prabhupada était très suspicieux et en grande anxiété, pensait que c'était ces 3 disciples qui avaient été tués. Donc il priait pour eux. Et un beau jour, Brahmananda n'est pas resté au Pakistan. Il est parti quand il a vu que le volcan était en train de chauffer. Donc il est revenu en Inde. Et quand il est rentré dans le bureau de Prabhupada à Bombay, Prabhupada était tellement heureux de le voir que pratiquement il pleurait. Et son anxiété tout d'un coup était dissipée. Et je sais pas, Prabhupada était incroyablement content que son disciple soit revenu. Prabhupada aussi était très affecté quand des disciples n'arrivaient pas à maintenir leur vœu, leur standard, et qu'ils repartaient. So Prabhupada was also affected by the fact that some disciples were not serious enough, on some pretext or plea, or they would leave Krishna consciousness and return to their old habits. So Prabhupada was really concerned by that. Also Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was equally suffering because some disciples were not able to follow his instructions. The weeks went by. Some of the devotees had spoken to Bob about initiation, but he wasn't sure. He didn't know exactly what initiation was, but it seemed to him that the other devotees were eager to get him initiated because he was working and had a family. To Bob's way of thinking, he represented maturity to them, a middle-class American, and they were eager to lend him. Bob's wife was not interested, and his friends were downright opposed. He couldn't spend much time with Prabhupada or the devotee, since he was either at the office or at home with his family. Bob speaks. So they were asking me if I was interested in initiation. I said I would think about it. I hadn't stopped smoking. I hadn't made the final decision. The first personal exchange I had with the Swami was when I asked for initiation. The rest of the time, I was so much in awe of him that it didn't occur to me to say anything. I always wanted to. I felt puffed up, and I was always thinking, well, I should be able to talk to him. Maybe I should do something. But I was always kind of reluctant to do it. I didn't think it was my place. I guess maybe I was afraid. But I was getting up early and chanting 32 rounds a day, many of them on the subway. I was afraid of the material world because I didn't have much association with devotees, and I wanted to insulate myself by chanting more. Donc là, Bob parle et donc il y a eu des bruits qu'il y avait peut-être y avoir une initiation dans le début de l'ébauche de temple. Et Bob se posait la question s'il devait se faire initier ou pas. La femme de Bob n'était pas intéressée. Donc là, il confie son mental. Est-ce que je devrais lui parler? Je me sens pas purifié, je me sens orgueilleux. Je devrais faire quelque chose, je devrais lui parler. Parce qu'en fait, il chantait 32 tours par jour. Et la plupart plupart, il les chantait dans le métro, dans les allées et venues. En fait, il craignait le monde matériel, il voyait bien que c'était dangereux pour lui, et, parce qu'il n'avait pas assez d'associations avec les dévots. Judy was another person who was considering initiation, and I asked her what she was going to do about it, and she said, I'm thinking about it. And then she told me she had decided she would get initiated and give up all her bad habits. I began to think maybe I could give up these things too. So I asked what to do. How do I approach him? And Kirtanananda said, well, you go up to his room. I was surprised it was so easy. Donc je dis, donc la fille qui était artiste, elle considérait aussi le truc. Et elle y pensait. Et finalement, elle a décidé qu'elle allait être initiée et puis qu'elle allait laisser tomber les mauvaises habitudes, les 4 principes, qu'elle allait suivre les 4 principes régulateurs. Et donc Bob se disait, moi aussi, est-ce que je vais arriver à faire ces choses-là? Comment je vais approcher le Swami? Alors Kirtanananda, il a dit, va juste le voir dans sa chambre. J'étais surpris que ça soit si facile, pensait Bob. I had prepared a little speech in my mind. My dear Swamiji, would you kindly accept me as your disciple and teach me about Krishna consciousness? I went up to his room without any appointment and knocked on the door. I heard him say, come in. I entered the room and he was sitting behind his desk. He was alone. I made obeisances and he looked at me and said, yes. And I said, Swamiji, will you make me your disciple? And that's as far as I got. I was going to say, and teach me the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, but he didn't let me finish my speech. He said, yes. It was so simple, I thought. Well, there's nothing else to say. He has accepted me. So I thanked him, and paid my obeisances on that. Donc finalement, Bob a fait tout un cinéma dans son mental. Il allait dire ceci, cela, Swamiji. Donc il est monté, et finalement la conversation a tourné très court, et puis il lui a juste demandé, est-ce que vous m'accepteriez comme disciple? Et il n'a pas eu le temps de finir sa phrase que Swamiji a dit oui, tellement simple. Après il s'est dit, j'ai rien d'autre à dire, il m'a accepté. Donc il l'a remercié, offert ses hommages, et puis il est descendu. You know, you're not supposed to be up here unless you're initiated, Achyutananda said. Jadi was flustered. She had come upstairs to put some dirty pots in the kitchen. Oh yes, she replied, that's just what I wanted to talk to Swamiji about. And she wanted to Prabhupada's room where he was talking with a few other people. Swamiji, could I get initiated? She asked. And he said, do you know the 4 rules? Yes. Can you follow them? Yes. Then you can be initiated in 2 weeks. Donc je dis, donc elle est montée dans la chambre du Swami, où il parlait déjà avec d'autres personnes. Et elle a demandé, est-ce que je peux être initié? Et Prabhupada lui a dit, tu connais quelles sont les 4 règles? Oui. Tu peux les suivre? Oui. Alors tu seras initié dans 2 semaines. Donc on voit au début, je suis un peu empreinte, prenez pas mal de risques. Simplement en l'espace de quelques semaines, quand les disciples avaient une attitude de service et puis un petit désir, Srila Prabhupada tout de suite fanait cette petite étincelle Bhakti? Il dit oui, tu seras initié. Dan was also thinking about initiation, but he wanted to wait. He was chanting 60 rounds and attending all the classes, despite his reluctant wife. He had always had difficulty with authority figures, but he could feel that the Swami was winning him over and wearing down his impersonal barriers. 2 weeks after, Prabhupada held another initiation ceremony. Bob became Rupanuga and Judy became Jadurani. That needed a little more time. Donc, quelque temps après, Dan se posait toujours la question est-ce que je vais me faire initier ou pas. Il préférait attendre. Il chantait 16 tours, il suivait les classes et tout, en dépit de sa femme qui n'était pas dans le coup. Mais il sentait qu'il était gagné par la figure de Srila Prabhupada et que son blindage impersonnel fondait petit à petit. Donc il a attendu. Donc Srila Prabhupada a fait l'initiation, Bob est devenu Rupanuga et Judy est devenu Jadurani et Dan a attendu quelque temps plus tard. Donc we are here at the very beginning where the first initiated are taking their robes and being initiated by Srila Prabhupada in a very rickety temple. No deities, just frames or pictures, and the devotees, aspirant devotees, are in the middle of following the rules and regulation because, like everyone in the material world, everyone, especially in the Bowery, I was speaking with Shrutakoti. The Bowery looks like the bowels of New York, the intestine of New York, the cream, the young peoples in the Bowery. That's where Prabhupada started his movement, practically in the refuse of American culture in New York. The refuse, the young people. So everybody was addicted to sex, wine, drugs, money games. There are no money, or they didn't play money. And intoxication and meat eating, of course. So following the rules was really a big thing, a big adventure. Will you be able to follow them? Can you follow these rules? Yes. It's a firm determination. Drida Vrata. This is the sign of the Mahatma. They have a strong determination to continue their spiritual life in spite of so many obstacles that you have to meet in your lifetime. So many temptations. Difficult to get dry in an ocean of force. Kali Yuga is described as an ocean of force. Difficult to get dry. Donc on voit comment les aspirants disciples ont beaucoup de difficultés à affermir leur foi, à prendre des engagements. Parce que, en fait, Srila Prabhupada est allé pêcher ses premiers disciples dans le Bowery. Alors je disais avec Orishori, Bowery c'est très proche de bowel, c'est un jeu de mots avec, ça veut dire les tripes, les intestins. Le Bowery c'est un peu comme les intestins de New York. C'est là où il y a les gens rejetés de la société. Donc tout le monde est bien sûr accoutumé aux drogues, le vin, l'alcool, le sexe. Les jeux d'argent, il n'y en a pas parce que personne n'a un sou. Tout le monde est fouché à cette époque-là, dans ce point. Et puis bien sûr la consommation de viande, et poisson, œufs, tout le monde est là-dedans. Donc ça fait vraiment une grosse cassure quand on prend un engagement, une grande détermination que Krishna a définie dans le Bhagavad Gita, Dridharvataha, c'est-à-dire des vœux très forts. Donc dans le verset qui définit les qualités Mahatmanas Tumam Parta, Devim Pakriti Nashvata, non, c'est pas ce verset, ça c'est... Il y a 2 versets qui décrivent qui est un Mahatma. Un qui explique qu'il est sous la protection divine, et l'autre qui explique que, dû à sa ferme détermination, il adore toujours Krishna en dépit des obstacles qui inévitablement se dressent dans la voie de la dévotion, spécialement dans l'âge de Kali qui est comparé à un océan de fautes. Et comme quoi c'est difficile de rester au sec quand on est dans un océan de fautes. Donc quand on arrive à prendre refuge sur le bateau de la conscience de Krishna, on peut rester au sec. Sinon, très difficile. Très difficile. Donc c'est la fin du chapitre. We are at the end of the chapter. Stay high forever. For a new one, chapter 21, Beyond the Lower East Side. Il y a peut-être des questions, des commentaires, or commentary, or question about these topics? Yeah?
Juste quand tu as dit que Prabhupada il prenait le risque.
Ah, je ne peux pas entendre.
Quand tu as dit que Prabhupada il prenait le risque quand il a initié les dévots, les personnes qui n'avaient pas été vraiment qualifiées. Mais Prabhupada il n'a pas pu prendre le risque. Si Prabhupada il allait la libérer, il n'a pas pris le risque, c'est juste la miséricorde.
Je ne peux pas entendre. I'm too deaf, I cannot.
Là, tu es trop loin.
Ah,
Il faut être là.
c'est pas
Sorry.
Can you tell any more about the initiation process in those days? I heard that Prabhupada initiated people really quickly, and it's more strict now. I mean, what stories have you heard?
At the beginning, Srila Prabhupada gave the 4 regs, the 4 rules. And later on, the other rules and regulation would follow automatically in due course of time. But to show the seriousness of the inquiry of the potential disciple, he asked the 4 regulative principles first. But what he first saw also the attitude of service. This is the main thing, because these youngsters were involved in obviously an interest, taking some austerity to wake up early to attend the lectures, taking the subway very early, attending the events, the kirtans, appreciating the kirtans. All this was sukriti that make you eligible for receiving the mercy of the pure devotee. If you're not interested, you don't ask questions, you don't attend lecture, you just hear it goes here, it goes there. Nothing happens in your heart. But if it does happen, it means that the rice is raked, is cooked. Donc, Srila Prabhupada n'a pas donné 36 règles, explications, etc. Il a juste demandé les 4 règles, les 4 principes à suivre à ses disciples. Mais ce qui intéressait Prabhupada, c'était de voir que ses aspirants disciples avaient une attitude de service et un intérêt pour la vie spirituelle, un intérêt pour ce qu'il disait, parce qu'il faisait des austérités pour écouter les classes, faire certaines choses qu'ils avaient envie de faire. Cette attitude de cœur, elle facilite la miséricorde de Krishna qui vient à travers le dévot, qui est d'accord de donner l'initiation. Donc on voit qu'en fait tout commence le début par une écoute attentive qui se traduit par une attitude de service et par une anxiété de faire quelque chose, et qui est le symptôme que le grain de riz est cuit, qu'on est prêt pour la vie spirituelle.
I mean, in the beginning, it's very, very difficult if you just come straight from outside a temple and you have to follow the 4 regulative principles. You have to get up, I don't know, 3:30 or to be Mangalati at 4:30, and other things as well. I mean, it's a big, big step for someone that has never been involved in those.
I speak for you.
For me, I mean, for me, it's been going gradually, so that was easier. But for some, I mean, it seemed like for them it would be a huge step.
It's a big step. Not an easy thing, cheap thing. Prabhupada would say, if you sell diamonds, don't expect everyone will buy. The price is obviously more expensive. Donc, Srila Prabhupada proposait des diamants et il disait à ses disciples, c'est pas tout le monde qui est prêt à acheter des vrais diamants. Beaucoup vont préférer acheter des moissonnites, des copies de diamants, des trucs qui ressemblent, du verre brisé, du verre trafiqué, bon marché. Mais payer le prix pour des diamants, c'est pas tout le monde qui est d'accord de payer le prix. Donc, Srila Prabhupada était conscient de ça. Poser ces diamants bon marché. It was like an auction. C'était comme une... donc, Srila Prabhupada proposait les diamants de la bhakti bon marché parce qu'il initiait très facilement, très peu de temps. Et c'était un peu comme les soldes. Tu peux acheter quelque chose qui normalement coûte très cher, mais pour moins cher, tu peux, avec un petit, quand même, quelque chose, tu peux acheter pendant les soldes. Yes.
When I joined, I was told you have to get initiated quickly. Don't wait, get initiated quickly.
You wanted to be initiated?
No,
quickly?
I was told. People told me, you have to get initiated quickly. Don't wait for a long time. Because initiation is only you cannot begin spiritual life without initiation. So I took initiation as quickly as possible. I had to wait only 6 months.
Yeah.
Did Prabhupada also say things like that, or no?
Yeah, you can hear his reading.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that can
For my humble self, I wait. They didn't want to initiate me after 1 year because they sent me in Sankirtan and I was nil. There was a score and money aspect. So after 2 years they initiated me, Bhagavan. I could feel there was some monetary consideration.
Yeah.
I was not that much into Sankirtan distributing books, and I was the last one. I had a very low quota, we had got Lakshmi quota, 300 francs. It was 50 euro per day. I was not able to do that. I will do quasi nothing for months, 4 months, maybe 1 year, like that.
Was it not difficult for you, Prabhu?
So on this consideration, I was not given initiation. It was a little...
Was it not difficult for you, Prabhu, about immediately becoming initiated,
No, because that's
regular principles? And
Donc dans mon cas
that's what they
personnel,
told me to do.
j'ai pas été initié avant 2 ans. Parce que les dévots qui étaient de mon époque, qui ont joué en même temps, ils ont été initiés après 1 an. Et on nous a mis rapidement en Sankirtan, distribution des livres. Donc il y avait des quotas de Lakshmi, et puis des scores de livres. Mais bon, moi, on m'en avait donné à faire 300 francs par jour. J'y arrivais pas. C'était 50 €. J'étais pas du tout dans le truc Sankirtan. C'était dur pour moi. Je venais d'un statut d'ingénieur un peu post-up, tu vois. Je me retrouvais mendier à vendre des disques, des cassettes et des livres. Dans mon esprit, c'était un peu dur. C'était vraiment dur. Donc j'ai rien fichu à Sankirtan pendant 1 an, 1 an et demi, puis après ils m'ont quand même initié après 2 ans. Mais bon, j'ai quand même vu qu'il y avait des considérations monétaires dans l'histoire, ça mettait un peu des doutes aussi. Ça. Bien, j'avais une attitude de service, j'étais correct et tout, mais en Sankirtan, je ne valais rien du tout. Anyway, after 40 years, 50 years, you don't care about those things. So many mistakes in the beginning were there. We were all youngsters of the Bhakti. The so-called spiritual master were youngsters.
How old or how young were you?
Everybody was a youngster. Even when you were more determined or more advanced by quoting some shloka from Bhagavad Gita or like that. Donc à cette époque, en fait, tout le monde était des néophytes. Quand bien même il y en a qui étaient auréolés de maîtres spirituels, qui savaient parler bien, avec des bons mantras, des bons shlokas, des bonnes citations et tout. Basiquement, la bhakti, c'est encore autre chose. Donc beaucoup d'erreurs ont été faites, de choses pas très Vaishnava à cette époque-là. Mais bon, dans le flot du temps, qui s'en préoccupe après 10 ans, 20 ans, 30 ans, 50 ans? C'est du passé. Beyond the Lower East Side. Alors là, c'est le divertissement au Prabhupada, qui a eu des problèmes de santé. Peut-être on garde pour la prochaine le Prabhu qui donnera la classe, qui commencera un nouveau chapitre. Kantaraj Shira Prabhupada Lilamrita ki. Shira Prabhupada ki.